So hi everyone, good evening. I'm Stephanie Rosen. I'm the director at Camp Stein. Rabbi, thank you for that short welcome and just a little nod and information to what we've all been thinking about and what we've all been anticipating. And we know that everyone is looking forward to hearing a little more information this evening from us on the campsite, but also from David Solomon, who has joined us from HSI, High School in Israel, that is our partner in Israel with this program. So we have a lot to share with you, a lot of information. I'm going to start our slideshow here, hoping this works out the way that we're hoping, the way that we plan. Let's see. All right, can I just get a thumbs up? Jen, are you looking at the slideshow now? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Um, so we this evening are going to start with, we're going to jump right in. We know what is on everyone's mind and the questions that everyone is really thinking about and taking into consideration when thinking about sending our campers to Israel this summer. We're really excited with the amount of interest and the feedback that we got both on the survey that we filled out and just via email and phone calls since the survey, hearing about the interest. And I'm really excited to know that our campers are still looking forward to this and knowing that you as parents are taking it into consideration. And I think we all know and understand how valuable an experience is traveling to Israel and traveling to Israel with our friends from camp, of course. So we're going to go through this evening. We are going to hear from our partners at Alexander Muss High School in Israel. David Solomon, like I mentioned, is joining us from Israel right now. Thank you, David, for waking up quite a bit early this morning to join us. We're going to go through safety and security procedures. He's going to walk us through a lot of that sort of what happens on the ground, and hopefully that will answer a lot of your questions. And then, of course, at the end, we'll have time for additional questions if needed. Look at some sample itineraries, talk a little bit about dates, registration, and of course, the application process and scholarships. So I'm going to jump right in. Like I said, I know this is where a lot of the questions really are that everyone is thinking about and everyone is looking for more information about. Our program partner in Israel, so Alexander Muss High School in Israel, as I introduced them in the email that we sent, they are experts in Israel education. They're experts in youth Israel travel. They truly are one of the premier programs in Israel. They run many different summer program opportunities. They run high school semester in Israel programs. David will share more with us, but just to give you an idea, like they really do, this is what they do, and they do it very professionally. We've been working with them now for a few years. Unfortunately, last summer we weren't able to go to Israel, but we had a wonderful experience with them. Our first summer with them in 2023 had just a wonderful experience. The campers that were there, the staff that were there, all felt very supported. The families felt very supported and communicated well with. And so we're excited to continue that partnership and really looking forward, hopefully, to another great summer this summer with all of you and your campers. David, I'm going to hand it over to you, and you can do a little introduction and then talk more about sort of the procedures on the ground.
Thanks, Stephanie. Good evening to everyone. My name is David Solomon. I have been involved in educational Jewish youth visits to Israel since 1988. I'm one of the program managers at Alexander Muss, which we run about 25 or so different programs, and each program manager has a number of groups that they look after. And San Diego is one of my groups, I'm happy to say. Um, I'm currently speaking to you from the Alexander Musk campus in Hod Sharon. We have two campuses here in Hod Sharon and Beersheba. For Camp Stein, the base will be Hod Sharon campus, it's south of Netanya, north of Tel Aviv, next to Pasava, for those of you familiar. We won't be spending too much time here because this is not an academic group, this is a tour group, but this will be our base, our home in Israel. I will be accompanying the group, not 24/7, but always available and on some of the trips. And I will be taking care of logistics, etc., to make sure everything goes smoothly. We've been doing this for a while. We built the itinerary together with Stephanie, together with the camp staff, and I think we have an awesome experience plan. Now, I know that the elephant in the room is the security question. So let me speak to that for 2 minutes. Our number one concern above everything else, our number one priority is the health and safety of the kids. After that comes education and fun. In other words, we absolutely want the kids to be safe. Without them being safe, everything else is meaningless. Now, we have protocols in place for just about every single circumstance. We have the security staff. We are in touch with something called the security room in Israel. This is a joint project of the army, the police, and the Nature Reserves Authority in Israel. They approve all of our programs. If there's any reason for a security alert, or a weather alert, they will let us know. Our plans are approved a long time ahead, and the day before and the morning of each trip. We're in contact with them. If there's any kind of reason for concern, they will let us know. We have a guard/medic with the group every time they leave campus, every time they leave the hotel. On campus, we have also a nurse who's available 24/7 for consultation, and the group's medical insurance will be through one of the major health providers in Israel, with facilities all over the country. Every single hotel that we use has a safe room. That means that if, God forbid, there's an alert, they can get to a shelter within the time. Now, I'm sure it's a huge relief to all of you and as it is to all of us, that the ceasefire that was declared a week ago seems to be holding. There are little hiccups here and there, but we certainly haven't had, thank God, we haven't had sirens or anything like that here at Hod Sharon or anywhere else in the country. The only sirens that have gone off have been ones that have been set off by accident. So hopefully that will continue. Now, this group is scheduled to go up north. If there's any reason for concern, if there's any reason to doubt that this is as safe as can be, then we have alternative paths. We can give, for example, they're due to spend a weekend in Spa, which is a magical place. And if for some reason we feel that we shouldn't go there, or of course, if we're told we shouldn't go there, then we have alternative plans, and we can still give them a meaningful experience. But the hope now is that the war is behind us, and that at least for the next few years, things are going to revert to normal, or what passes for normal in this crazy country. But also, I'd like to stress, we don't visit sites over the Green Line. It's just not part of our schedule. Even though we are allowed to, we take a more conservative approach than what we're actually allowed to do. So, as I said, health and safety are our primary concern. I and other members of staff are available 24/7 while the group is here, and I literally mean 24/7. For any kind of situation, any kind of emergency. I'm available by phone, I'm available by email, and I'll be happy to address any concerns that might come. So, Stephanie, unless there are other questions you'd like me to relate to now, I think that's it for the moment.
Thank you. So as we go through all of this information, feel free, if you do have questions, you can just put them into the chat box, and then we will review all the questions at the end. Jennifer Walker, our associate director, is also on the call, and she is sort of keeping an eye on the chat box so we can try to answer more specific questions or individual questions that way. And then, like I said, we'll also share at the end and try to answer as many questions as we can then as well. So we wanted to just sort of review. We've heard a lot about these sort of on the ground procedures now, what Alexander Must really does to help support our group, the planning process, what they've done, and sort of the process once we're in Israel. So want to look at just what do a couple days on the big trip look like. Typically, not typically, every day they'll have breakfast in the morning. Typically that breakfast is at the hotel, and then they'll head off to some activity. So Dig for a Day is an example. It's actually, I think, one of the more fun, exciting opportunities that our campers get to participate in. It's something that, for me, being in Israel, and you grow up learning about these places and reading about history in school, and then when you're there, you actually see these places, and you get to actually stand in these same places. And the archaeological dig site is just one of those amazing opportunities to me when it sort of all comes together. So they get to participate in an archaeological dig site, and there are many different sites. They are typically sites that are actually in process. So these are true running archaeological digs. They might get to do a tunnel crawl and actually get to see in some of the spaces that are being worked on at that time, or see parts that have been uncovered, things that were found, where they were found, and learning more about that depending on the site that they're at. So after lunch, then heading into Spot. David actually mentioned Spot in his example also. And they might have time learning with an artist, one of the artists there, learning about the Jewish mysticism, how it ties in with that specific artist and the work that they're doing. They might learn about the Kabbalah through art, things like that, different connections through Judaism. Having dinner there in Spot, they might have different options. There's a particular square where there's a few different options all right close together. So the campers might have the option to pick one of those, and then they all sit together and enjoy dinner, and then head to their hotel for the evening, and have an evening that night, maybe working on a group project. Depending on where they are in the trip, they might have time to work on their group journal. They might be preparing presentations for each other about different areas. They might be working on their closing project if it's something towards the end, or planning another group program that'll happen a different night. So the campers get divided into different committees and might work on different things, or they might have a fun program that evening. So another example of a day sort of based in Tel Aviv. So again, breakfast at the hotel, a walking tour down the Tel Aviv promenade towards Jaffa, and then spending some time in Jaffa, in the old city there, comparing and contrasting the old city of Jaffa to the new of Tel Aviv. There's an amazing overlook that looks out from Jaffa onto Tel Aviv and onto the beach, and really being able to see that contrast between the two. and then walking down Rothschild Boulevard, one of the very first one of the very first streets built in Tel Aviv, and is sort of the center of that city. Having some beach time in the afternoon, and then dinner at the hotel and a fun Israeli movie night that evening. So jumping ahead to what registration looks like. So this is all information also that was included in that initial email. So our dates for the summer would be June 4th to 25th. And then all of the campers would be invited up to Camp Stein for Shabbat celebration and overnight during second session in July. That date has not yet been set, but we will have that for you soon. Tuition for the program, as we mentioned, is approximately $10,000. That includes the round trip flights from Phoenix. We know that that is a big number, and that's a big amount of money to swallow. We're very lucky that our program does qualify for a Route 1 grant, which is an organization that is providing grants specifically to teen travel experiences of a certain length, and you have to apply and have your trip approved. This is another benefit of working with Alexander Muss, as they really sort of do the groundwork for this and ensure that we meet all of the criteria in order to have that grant. And so that provides $3,000 for every participant. We'll talk a little bit more about it in just a minute, but there are some elements of the grant that our campers have to complete ahead of time and then also during the trip. For our campers that are in the Phoenix area, there's also a Grossman Teen Israel Experience Scholarship that awards up to $750 for each camper. For those outside the Phoenix area, we know that many federations, community foundations, different organizations, other congregations have money and have put aside money specifically for teen travel to Israel. And so it's always something we suggest checking into in your local community as well. And then looking at when the tuition would be due, half the tuition would be due mid-February with the balance due mid-April. So the process for the application, it's a little bit different than coming to camp. There are a few extra steps, but it is fairly similar. So the initial application and tuition payments come through Camp Stein. It is the same application system, CampMinder, that you have all grown accustomed to through summer camp. Our code of conduct process is a little bit different for this program. We do have a more formal process that we'll talk about and an orientation session as well that we'll host. And then once our campers are signed up and registered through CampMinder, we will send along the link to register directly with Alexander Muss for the program. And then most of the additional sort of summer forms, paperwork that we typically would have for camp will be done directly with them. So medical forms, passport information, other things like that. And then, of course, the health information. A little bit more about the scholarship. So I mentioned the Route 1 scholarship or the grant. It is $3,000 for each participant. This is not need-based. So this is something that all participants are eligible to receive. The requirements that they must fulfill include about 8 to 10 hours of Israel education prior to the trip. And there are many different ways for them to sort of gain those hours. Part of that is included with our big trip orientation that we'll host and a session that we'll host specifically for those participants. And then there's other opportunities that are online opportunities. They might be reading opportunities. attending different programs. There's a range of ways that they can collect those hours. Route One has really tried to make it easy for them to access the grant and fulfill that requirement. And then again, for those that are in our Phoenix area, we have the Grossman Teen Israel Experience Fund. Like I said before, it's up to $750 per participant. There is an application required, a letter of recommendation required, and then there is also some pre-trip Israel education required. Again, it's fulfilled by the Big Trip orientation and other programs that they will also do for the Route One. So those they do overlap. They don't have to think about those hours separately. It's all included. So with the tuition, obviously hotels, museum, other site admissions, transportation within Israel. They use a charter bus when they're traveling within Israel. They have the same bus driver typically, or one of two different drivers, depending on the length of the travel, similar to what we would have here in the US. Their meals, they will eat, as we mentioned, at their hotels. They might eat in restaurants or food court areas. It'll vary each day, sort of depending on where they are. The round trip flights between Phoenix and Israel is included. So for those of you that are outside the Phoenix area, getting to Phoenix to travel with the group is not included. Medical insurance coverage while they are in Israel is included. They will each have a policy. We do want to make sure that you know that it does not cover any pre-existing conditions. So we would suggest checking your own policies if there's an ability to add on. Many of them offer that to add on for that. And then I believe Alexander Muss also has an additional policy that you can purchase to add on if needed. And then we do send Camp Stein staff with the group to Israel. So depending on the size of the group, we'll send most likely at least 2 of our Camp Stein staff members. And then as the group grows larger, we would send a 3rd person if needed. And then Alexander Muss also provides additional staff. They have usually an Israeli counselor that joins the group, in addition to the educator that is with the group throughout the trip. Obviously, the bus driver, as David mentioned, and the security guard and medic, and then the additional emotional health staff and medical staff that is available to our group throughout the trip. So you might be asking, then what is not included? We suggest travel insurance. That is not something that is already included. Families often look into purchasing that separately. Spending money, as you can see in the photo, ice cream is very popular in Israel. Ice cream and coffee are the 2 things that I feel like we hear the most about. When can we get coffee and when can we get ice cream? And general souvenirs. They might want snacks at different places, different times, things like that. So definitely want to make sure they have some spending money and health insurance for those pre-existing conditions, like I mentioned before. So some final just sort of notes and reminders before we get into Q&A. So registration will be coming soon, along with additional information. I know we had mentioned in the emails about some changes to our OSREAM program this summer, since our campers were not able to go to Israel last year. Campers that would have gone last year have the opportunity to go this year instead. So we have 2 cohorts of campers that are potentially looking to go this year. So because of that, we are looking at some changes to our OSREAM program, which is our counselor and training program for our entering 12th graders. So we'll have more information about that as well as registration for the Israel trip. We'll have that up on our website in the near future. I would say give us a couple weeks. Jennifer and I are headed out Friday for a conference, so we will be away for a little bit, but we are going to work on getting this up as soon as we can. We will also have an additional orientation session where we will go into a lot more details once we have our campers registered, once we know who's coming. In the spring, we'll do more of an orientation session. We'll go over more logistics. We'll have more specific travel information, packing lists and suggestions. In the past, we've had campers who have been on the trip before come and share a little bit more about their experience and their suggestions of what to bring and what to leave at home. So it's always nice to have that group all together. And then we'll also, at that session, do a separate program with the participants, sort of in preparation for their trip as well, and getting that group together. We'll also have our code of conduct meetings. So as you can imagine, taking a group of campers to another country, we do have some expectations for those campers and for our parents as well. So we do have a code of conduct, and we'll meet, a member of our professional team will meet with each family individually and review that code of conduct and just ensure that we're all on the same page and there's no questions. We'll share more about that reunion Shabbat at camp in July. And just a passport reminder. Passports are taking some time. If you don't have one yet, if it needs to be renewed, we suggest looking into that. Even if you're still a little unsure about participating, I would encourage you to consider going ahead and moving forward with that passport process. We know some families have expressed to us in the past that it's taken them much longer than what the passport agency expects, and I know some get it very quickly. So unfortunately, there's a lot of inconsistency in that process. So we would suggest going ahead and starting that process sooner rather than later. And that is what we have at this time. We'll go through and do some questions. I'm going to just look through the chat. If you have additional questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or there is a raise hand feature that we can use in the Zoom meeting as well. Give us just a minute. We'll look through some of these questions and we'll get started answering them. Okay, I'm just going to do this as we go. So I'll pause briefly between questions. So the first one is, what happens if the trip gets canceled? Is there a refund? So we will share more about those policies once we launch that registration and what will constitute sort of the trip being canceled versus somebody choosing to cancel their participation. So that might vary a little bit. We'll be sure to address that in the registration process as well. And as far as needing to leave early, if the participants are in Israel and needing to leave early for any reason, HSI would support us in working through that process and ensuring that the group flies together, if at all possible, to make sure that everyone is still accompanied by a staff member on their way home. But they would certainly help coordinate that as well. And yes, Alexander Muss did run trips last summer. David, I don't know if you want to mention anything about those trips.
Sure. A number of camps and schools and programs did cancel. We did run trips last summer, and we actually at the moment we have our semester program here, and the kids are having a great time. They've done it through the alarms and everything. They're notably unfazed by that. But in terms of last summer, I was personally the manager for the group from San Diego Jewish Academy. We did Poland and then came to Israel. They had a great time here. There was nothing unusual. They were safe. They felt safe. We altered the program. They did not go to the north. But apart from that, we never had a situation where we were told by the security or by the Moked Teva not to go somewhere. And we never felt the need ourselves to change the itinerary. Once we adapted it in order not to go to the north, it went very smoothly, and that's been the experience with our other programs as well. In fact, in all my years of working with these groups, the only time where we've had like a last-minute cancellation or change dictated to us was due to weather. We were supposed to go crawling through a cave system, and it had been raining. So we got a notice from the Moked Teva, from the security room, that the caves were closed and we had to change. That's the only time we've ever had to change anything last minute based on security room recommendations. So yes, we did run programs, and there was nothing unusual.
Thank you. So we have a question about the education requirement for the Route 1 grant. Does confirmation class fulfill that requirement? I'm not sure that confirmation class as a whole does. We would have to look at the requirements from Route 1 and what the topics are for that confirmation class and sort of what they're going to be covering at different sessions. I imagine there might be part of it that could be, but again, we'll have to, once we have the full requirements from Route 1 for that. Staff for the big trip. So we have had some staff express interest. We do typically every year have staff express interest. We're very early in that hiring process for the summer, so we don't have anyone specific to share at this time. But we have had folks express an interest, and we will be moving forward with that process to hire those staff. So typically we aim to have those staff hired by the time that we do our orientation session early in the spring. And our goal is that those staff are at that orientation as well. It doesn't always happen depending on where they are. They may not live in town, things like that, but we usually try to include them. How many camper? Okay. So as we mentioned in I think it was one of the earlier emails that went out about the parent survey, in order to run this trip in a financially feasible way for all of us, we need a minimum of 15 participants confirmed. So we will, with registration, and if folks have questions ahead of time, we have many more than 15 families that had registered for this call and have expressed an interest, which is wonderful to hear. And we're hoping that that turns over and that folks do find this helpful and find the information that David shared helpful and feel comfortable sending their campers this summer. So we do need 15. If we get 25 or more, the price could actually come down a little bit. So that's sort of where we are and why, just in full transparency, why we are saying that it's approximately 10,000 right now. We are hoping that that cost does not go up. The concern also is flights and the cost of flights themselves. So our goal is to keep it at 10,000 or to actually be able to come down a little bit is, like I said, if we have more than 25 participants. Yes, question is if we would combine the cohorts. So yes, we will combine the cohorts if that makes it possible to run the trip. If we do get a very overwhelming registration and we have enough to run 2 separate buses with each grade, we would certainly look into that possibility as well with Alexander Muss. It was part of our original initial conversations for this summer. As of now, with the number of families that have expressed an interest, though, it looks like we would have one combined group traveling together. And then we had a couple questions about our Ozream program and the costs and everything with that. And we'll share more information about that via email as we're working through just some of the different options that we would like to make available to our families for the summer. We need to still work through some of those details. For those of you that have campers that are Ozo age, we are looking at both offering a first session and a second session in addition to the full summer program. So we're just working through some of those details on our end, and then we'll send out more information as well with that. And it looks like that is all the questions that have been submitted. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to unmute yourself. You're welcome to ask or include it in the chat. And if you don't have any other questions, thank you so much for joining us. We will stay on the call for a little bit longer and answer additional questions if there are. You can also always reach out to us in the office. We are available and happy to chat through any questions you might have, or obviously look into more information if there's something that would be helpful in your decision-making process. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and stop recording the meeting now. And like I said, we'll stay on a little bit longer. If folks do have questions, feel free to stick around and we can chat a little bit more. Thank you so much for joining us and for, diving in a little bit deeper with us for this trip this summer. We are, really hopeful and would love to see more of our campers just have this wonderful experience in Israel and get to see all these amazing places and do that with their camp friends. It truly is just a magical, fun experience. So thank you all for joining us. And please be in touch if other questions come up. And we will share more of the registration details via email as soon as we are able to launch all of that online.
Stephanie, you have another question that just came up in the chat. I don't know if you saw that.
I did not. Let me look. There's too many things on my screen, I feel like. Okay. Oh, how'd you compare? So she's okay, Deborah's on. So the question is about full season Ozo this year, saving an Israel trip for later, comparing sort of the Camp Stein Israel experience with other travel opportunities. It's hard to compare an experience traveling with your camp friends and traveling with that community as a teen with other experiences. I have led campers to Israel personally on birthright experiences. I myself participated in a youth travel experience, potentially one that David Solomon also was part of the planning on. And they're just such different experiences. It's hard to say that one replaces the other rather than they build on one another. Birthright experiences obviously are the other most common experience for students in college and a little bit older than college to participate in, and it's just such a different experience. Our trip is 3 weeks, and Birthright is 10 days. So they are just having a much more in-depth experience on this trip than they might have in the future. But it also just depends if you're considering a semester in Israel versus a Birthright experience. There's a lot of different opportunities, and they all offer many different things. I think going with a camp group is, with camping in my background, that's always something that I encourage, just the depth of the relationships and the program itself. It's just a very unique opportunity.
Can I chip in here?
Sure.
Over the years, watching groups, it's difficult to overstate how the value of coming with people that you've been going to camp with for years, that you've known, that you've got this little Kehilah, this community that you've built, and you go through this incredibly powerful experience together with them. That adds a tremendous amount to the experience. The second thing is, as Stephanie mentioned, Birthright is 10 days. So you'd have probably one Shabbat in Israel. We've got 3 Shabbat experiences in Israel that are very different. We've got Tel Aviv experience, where the plan is to go to the open air Kabbalat Shabbat experience at the port, which is on a Friday evening, which is an amazing experience. We've got Sfat, which is the center of mysticism, and of course you've got a Jerusalem Shabbat experience. We've tried very hard to bring different components in that you might not necessarily get. For sure, you won't get on a shorter trip, and you might not get on a trips. If you're considering maybe coming on a semester program, that's a different story. But in terms of a summer trip to Israel, coming with camp friends is an amazing way to do it.
Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to stop recording. Again, thank you all for joining us. Those of you that are watching this recording later, please do feel free to reach out to us with any questions or anything else that you'd like to discuss further.